don't make the mistake I did. It's 4 screws around the side. Don't take the ones off the top.
Yeah, top ones off and say, I can't get the lid off.
My wife said, "What on the side?" Shut up.
Yeah, thanks for the help. Right. And behold, there we go. So they're shipping them upside down now, and it actually makes it a lot easier to get them out of the box. So just pull the muffler out, and they went to a single pipe muffler on these. Go ahead and unwrap it.
Yeah, go ahead. I expected you to have a pocket.
There you go.
Shade.
My wife says I can't sharpen nothing for her. Just look in her kitchen.
Okay. And in here, you've got the DVD with all the engine manuals on it, or it's a CD, excuse me, with all the engine manuals, and then there's a packing slip in here also that tells everything that should have come along with the engine.
Yeah, it's important that you look.
There we go. Now along the back side, there should be 4 screws, like here, here, and down there.
Yep.
So those will come out. And have somebody on the front side, because it will roll out on you if you're not careful.
Once those bolts come in.
Right out, just like that.
And I was afraid of setting it on the ground.
There we go. You can put the box back on on the bottom there and put the top back on it. Else on another corner here. Just lift it up. There we go. Yeah, it's I gotta go get it. What's up?
At the factory, these engines, after they're assembled, they go to the dyno room and they get put on a dynamometer and run for about an hour and 15 minutes on a computer-controlled break-in sequence. They run it for a couple of minutes at idle, and then they take it up to, I don't know, 12 or 1500 for a minute or two, and down to idle again, and every time they keep getting up higher and higher and higher, and then it winds up with about a 10-minute full power run on the dynamometer. And again, the computer controls the whole thing. And they put everything together, and they have these washers left over. So I get questions, you know, what did I forget? Where do these washers go? These washers would go, demonstrate, here's what they call the pin weldment that goes on the end of each mount. See, that's the same as that piece right there. Well, you put one of these on the mount, and then you put the engine on it, and you put one of these on the other end of the mount. You stick one of them in there and put a AN431A bolt through. Well, okay, where do these go? If for some reason you need to change call it the angle of attack of your engine a little bit, you can, if you're working on the lower engine mounts, as an example, you can put one of these, or 2 of them even, behind the rubber that goes on the bottom. Put them on. There's 4 of these washers total. Put that on, and then this, and then your rubber or aluminum top hat here. Now what you've done is you've moved the bottom mount out a little, tilting the engine up. You can put them on one side to tilt the engine the other way. You can put on the other side to tilt the engine a little bit this way. Makes as much as a ½ inch difference in where the propeller is. First step in the Firewall Forward installation itself is checking the engine mount against the firewall. And I'm going to hold it up against here, and Mark is going to drill through from the backside, and we're going to stick a bolt or 2 in.
I'll switch them out. We'll see how long this one goes here.
See, there's already little
there's
in there that have got holes in them. You
Yep.
just got to go through them. Okay.
This fuselage belongs to a fellow in Arizona who lent it to us to help develop this 701 Firewall Forward kit. And those holes were in there when he brought it to us. So let's start with the one on this side. On one side. That's about right there.
all right.
Okay, go ahead. again, on the 601, same thing, just slide it on there to see how it fits. Then once you've done that and you're happy with the fit, then you take the thing off of there again and prime it and paint it. We use a self-etching primer. Got to clean it up good first. Self-etching primer, and then we're using a Rust-Oleum spray paint, their premium grade white gloss paint. These bushings on. The directions say these are the tops here. We have, I get a lot of calls, not a lot anymore, but after the fact, guys put the bushings on, put it on the motor, and after the fact they read the directions and they say, do I really need to turn my top ones around?
Yep.
Now, on the
That's
bottom, put the male on first.
Yeah, the mail-ins. Yep. Yep.
You mean you did these right on the top just by
I think
luck?
these off for That's a good photograph showing that.
Get it done right.
Okay. Now, a little explanation. Your engine is going to hang on this like so, right? So the weight of the engine is, when you're in flight, the engine is pulling forward. It's pretty symmetrical all the way around. But when the engine is on the ground, where's the force? That engine is trying to fall down, right? So the weight of the engine needs to be against the male part of the bushing, which on the bottom is the backside, and on the top the engine is trying to pull away. So on the top, the male part goes on the forward end of the mount. So once this is in place, then it comes from Honda, but it has this square box on it, and the lead is a little closer to the engine mount. So you see, this doesn't fit in there quite as well. So what we do is, you got a pen or a marker there? What
No.
we do is we're going to cut a little slice on clearance for the lead off the, and it doesn't make a whole lot of difference here because the weight, remember, is on the forward side. So it's tending to compress the forward side bushing, not that one. And it's a heck of a lot easier to put the mount on the engine without having the mount on the airplane. Because if the mount's on the airplane and you got your engine hanging from a pulley or an engine crane or something, you know, it's not that stable and steady, and you're trying to jockey it around and so forth. Just set the engine right on its prop flange, and then, whoops.
Oh, there we go. Let's see here. That goes over there.
Yep.
Did the other one come off?
Nope.
Okay.
And just put that on right like so.
Oh, you need a 7/16 socket. So you guys, Mike, where'd the 7/16 quarter go? I'll get Nick's.
And then you put this cap on, there's no bolt. So you can press out. But it works too. Put a little socket over there. And put that on there. And tighten it up a little bit. And there you can see the bolt coming through.
Do it with a C-clamp because I didn't have that either, and I've done this myself.
C-clamp work?
Yep.
Just a big C-clamp.
Just use a regular, just a larger C-clamp. It will work. You'll have to be off-center just a little bit. It'll pull it through just enough to get it started. That's all you have to do is just get it started.
I've actually got a C-clamp that doesn't have the little cup on. It's just got the screws in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll probably work.
Yeah, that'll work very well. And if not, and don't forget to put a little, like this one just happens to be a 7/16 quarter drive socket that we slide in there. as a backing so the bolt doesn't go backwards back up through the mount.
And if you have a top hat, is that spread far enough or not? Yeah, it'll go maybe. Now the tricky ones to do are these ones down in the bottom, because there's no clearance to put a tool like that in. But if you do the top ones and tighten the top ones up, often it will draw the bottom ones tight enough that you can get the nut on there and get it started.
There.
To get it started, what we've often done is we'll put the nut on without the washer, just to get it started, and pull it down on one side. That'll bring the other side down that you can get a nut and a washer on. Then you can take the nut back off of this, put the washer on, because unless you can get in there with a big pair of channel locks or something to squeeze them, do what you want to do. But that's what we've done a lot of times to accomplish this.
But if you have the engine mount already on the plane, which we do on the Lightnings, what we've learned, we put the bottom weldment, we hang it on the bottom first, just to get it in place. We don't try to get the screws through, and then we lift it up and put the top ones on and then squeeze them together. Then we let the weight off of it, and the weight does come down, and it'll squeeze this enough to get a nut and a bolt on it. It can be, and also what we learned is I went out and bought some lubricating jelly from Eckerd's, KY jelly, whatever you want to call it, and it worked very, very well this morning. Just put a little bit on the rubber. It's not supposed to deteriorate rubber, and it worked, slipped right on, because we've had a little bit of trouble. It just gets caught sideways or whatever. So it can be done, but it is, from 601, when I did, it's a lot easier to put the mount on first, and then hang it.
Now, where do you attach the? It doesn't have a hook eye or anything on it, does it?
Well, we use the straps. You can see we have nylon straps attached to the hook up in the front. On the front, I wrap it all the way around the prop flange, a couple of times around the prop flange, and tie it back up to the top of the hoist. On the back side here, what I do is I come down around the front side of the mount, and I try to keep it on billet aluminum all the way around. So when you come down on the underside here, underneath this motor mount, and then up over top of the carburetor. You don't want to get underneath the carburetor. That way you've got it underneath here.
Gotcha.
Across this billet here, back up underneath the motor mount here, and then back out through the top. And again, stay away from the fuel pump, up against the crankcase, and bring it up and around the top, and I just tie it off at the top again.
I started that.
All right, Murphy. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Because if you have the mount hanging on here, then you can sort of locate some of these things that go on here. And basically, we're talking 3 items: the battery, the cabin heat box,
Yep.
and then the carburetor heat mixer box.
And also the oil recovery bottle if you.
Oh, oil recovery
Yeah.
bottle. That's right. So that's if the engine is on there, then it's a little tougher to get in here to rivet these things to the firewall and so forth. But if you can locate them, then take the mount off, and then drill your holes for riveting and so forth, it might be easier.
The battery, they recommend putting the battery on the right-hand side, and the firewall forward kit comes with the L angle at the bottom, also with a form bracket for the PC625. But it's basically just look for a good central area that you can put the battery box in here, that it's not going to interfere with the mount. It also leaves you enough room at the bottom that you can work with a fuel pump and a gascolator or anything else you might have to put at the bottom of the engine underneath the battery here, because you start running out of space real fast. There we go. Thank you. Okay, there's the bracket. Put a piece of foam around it. The foam comes with it also. This is an Odyssey 680, and I believe most of what Dana's shipping out is the 625s, the Odyssey 625s. But what I did here is I tried to pick up a rivet hole that I'd already used. I didn't want to drill another hole through there. So I drilled out my rivet that I'd already built the firewall, picked up a rivet hole, expanded it out to an AN. That's a 3. So 3/16, and then found something level and just drilled another hole. Actually, I pulled a hole through this cross member right here, and that's how I did mine. That way I didn't want to drill any more holes. And I put this in with AN3 bolts. I don't figure I'm going to pull this out. And then set your battery up there, get your, whichever one you're using, mark it, and then same thing, let's see here. I ended up using a countersunk rivet in one because I just didn't want a domed rivet sitting up against the flat piece of the metal here. But just basically put in 2 nut plates on each side, and the same thing on the other side over here. You know, typical nut plate installation, drill your pilot holes, put the nut plates in, work it that way. And then you can set the battery up on there, and you can put the bracket back in. And I'm just using standard number 8 screws, nothing fancy. If you're going to do inverted, consider putting a little piece of angle on top of the battery. Again, if you want to put it with either, you could probably bolt that piece in and just slide the battery in, or you can nut plate it either way. That way, if you do get inverted, the battery doesn't slide out of the box. So it's just something to think about. We do them in the Lightnings. We put a little piece of angle on the top of the battery. The thing I ran into is where to put the oil bottle, the oil recovery bottle. And I thought about up in here, but I worried about my space where my battery was. Also, I knew I was going to have some cables passing through for choke and for throttle. Thought about over here. I couldn't find a very good place that I was really happy with, and especially after I drilled the big hole. So I called Pete and I said, hey, is it possible I could put it on the motor mount itself? He's like, yeah, you could do that. The only thing you have to worry about is having a slight uphill run from the oil dipstick area from the breather uphill a little bit and then down into the oil, into the recovery bottle. So, excuse me. So what I ended up doing, just made a bracket out of, I think it's 040, some 8L clamps. This is the older style oil recovery bottle. The new ones are actually aluminum, right? Yeah. But get that guy in there, and then depending on which way I had it running, put it on, and then I'll run an overflow tube down. When I get everything else set up, I'll run an overflow tube just to go down to the bottom here. And then I put on the count, when we get to the air ducts, I put a nut plate on the back of the air duct so I could put an 8L clamp just to kind of hold this solid. There was really I didn't want it rubbing up against the motor mount and vibrating there. So I brought it over just a little bit, put a nut plate in one of the cowlings, or the air ducts, and that held everything down. And the critical thing on the air box that Pete and I had talked about was when you make that 90-degree bend into the box, it needs to be as level as possible from the outlet tube to the inlet of the carburetor. And so that pretty much sets your height of your air box for you. And then right here, you have to make sure that your lever will will work freely without having to hit it up here on this upper support. Carburetor bowl vent comes from, there's a little nipple right here on the back side of the carburetor, and then it vents back into the air box. It needs to be on the positive side of the air box, correct?
It needs to be on the clean side.
Clean side air box, there we go. So, but it vents back into the air box here, so that's that connection there. And then you take your regular piece of scat hose. Now, the outlet is one size and the inlet is a different size, if I remember correctly. And the only thing you have to do is the outlet on this is bigger than the inlet on the carburetor.
Yeah, at
least on mine.
Tube coming out of the air box there is 2 1/4 inch. The carburetor is metric.
Yeah.
And it equates to a little bigger than 2 1/8.
Yeah.
So you just got to squeeze it down.
Yeah, squeeze it down and tighten the clamp on it. Oh, also, when you do finally mount it, run some RTV around it. You can use a red RTV or some type of silicone sealant when you finally put it up against the wall there, and then rivet it.
Plain old silicone.
It's just where you put the regulator and the starter solenoid. And honestly, there's really no guidance that was given, and this is just the best place I came up with. I thought I kept it close to the battery, short battery run. I like nut plates, so I nut plated it in just in case I have to take it off again in the future. And same thing with the regulator here. And that's all simple installation just like that.
Jabiru makes a 1 inch, 2 inch, or 3 inch extension
for both the 3300 and the 2200 engines. So depending on your application, but in the case of the Zenith, it's a 2-inch extension. And we'll see if we can hunt one of those up somewhere, either in this building or the other building, before we're done here to put it on. When you take this off, we got to do a couple of things. First, you got to get rid of the safety wire here. Okay, now that you got the safety wire undone, we're going to take these bolts out of here. But we need a way to keep the crankshaft from turning, because they're in there at 35 foot-pounds of torque. Well, we built ourselves a little tool. And not that you need to go that far. Before we got smart enough to build this tool, I took a 2x4 and I just cut a little half circle out of the side of the 2x4 and drilled through with 2 bolts sticking through there, and just put the 2x4 in place to so I could hold that crankshaft. Now, Jabiru in the instructions tells us to you know, wedge a screwdriver in the teeth on the flywheel in the back to keep it from turning. Ben and I just don't like that idea. That just bothers us. So you need for this a 5/16 hex driver and an extension for your is that what that's for, Mark?
That's your breaker bar.
Okay, let's see if I can.
Do you want to use that? Okay.
He's got a built-in breaker bar.
Okay, that is tight in there, I'll tell you that. Now, we've had a couple of these where they would not, we just couldn't hardly break them. So there you have to take like a heat gun and warm it up, that heat gun at the 900 degree setting or 1200, whatever it is, and 10 minutes just shoot it right out there. Oh, I see why. They tell us to put these back in with blue Loctite. But this green color here looks to me suspiciously like Loctite 620, which is a more permanent sealer. I didn't realize they had chain. Who else wants to give this a try?
Being I had to be a smart ass and say something.
Okay. The only metric stuff on there is in the Bing carburetor.
Okay.
Loctite 242 in there. And we got a long 5/16 driver. Going back in a lot easier than it came out. Okay, now got our torque wrench. These go to 30 foot-pounds. 30 foot-pounds. Got the torque wrench set for 20 to start with. We do tighten them all up to 20 and then set the torque wrench for 30 and go opposites, just like you'd torque a propeller. We'll set the wrench up to 30 foot-pounds. Okay, then let me just comment on Chuck's torquing technique here. Make sure when you torque these that you put your hand on the grip of the wrench. You wouldn't think it would make much difference, but when we were up in Neenah and we had access to Fox Valley Tech's torque wrench calibration thing, put your hand out here, it makes 2 to 3 pounds difference in when the wrench clicks, actually. And I don't know why it should. I don't understand quite why it should, but things are meant to put your hand right on the grip like that. And then, so I'll hand it to anybody who wants to torque these to 30. Don't be bashful. I'll hold it.
I'm going downhill. What do we got? One?
You know, guys will take a 3/16 bolt, tighten up, and they'll, well, they probably got at least double the torque. If you take like a nut driver, regular screwdriver handle, tuck that in there, and don't ramp on it, just firmly, that's 35 inch-pounds about. That's all you need. Guys who are taking a 1/4 inch socket and it gets tight, and that will give you way over 35 inch-pounds in a big hurry. But that's probably the most abused over-torqued bolt in any airplane, is a AN3 or a 3/16 bolt. These sort of lay in place here. Why don't I go print out the instruction for this? Oh, you got them right there? Lays down in there. Okay, gull wing baffles. If you all look at the book here, they lay on top, and we start a piece of safety wire up here. We go down and around and underneath that cylinder, on up through, back down through, on around the bottom of the cylinder, on up through the second one, down around there, and back to a little spring. So it's the spring tension on that safety wire that holds those whole things together. So let me do one here, or at least get started on one.
You got it ready.
Put a little pressure on the spring.
Pete, I've noticed on the 2200s that they have several different oil sumps.
Yeah. It's all out on the side.
Okay, there's your oil filter. Napa Gold 1394 or Fram PH 4967, or just go and ask for an oil filter out of a Toyota MR2 or a 4-cylinder Camry.
Toyota Camry, yeah.
From I don't know, mid-early 80s to the mid-90s.
Would you do the Napa number again, please?
Napa Gold 1394.
And what was the Fram?
PH 4967.
Thank you.
Okay, this is pretty simple. You just put this stub on here like this. And again, I'm bleeding all over it.
You want Coumadin too?
What's that?
You want Coumadin too?
No, just aspirin.
Bad enough.
Do you put that on there with Loctite or anything? Or
Nope.
Just put it on.
Just put it on there and snug it a little bit. And that's about all you need to do.
That's the silver adapter?
That's they call that the threaded adapter, I believe, right? Then,
Barely snugger, huh?
yep. I probably ought to put a little bit of oil right on this. Just put a little bit of oil on the O-ring so it'll seal good. A little bit of oil on that thing. Maybe I'll go in there easier instead of getting stuck. Okay, now, for now, we'll just put it on. Actually, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We need to change the fittings on this.
Problem is,
Mark.
okay, do you want to use one of Dana's kits?
Yep. Yeah, this gets one of those kits anyway, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right.
My
So we remove the...
wrench that's a little too small here for the job, you know. Again, a little story. This is what Jabiru provides for fittings for the oil cooler, is a a hose barb. And if you buy a Jabiru firewall forward kit from Jabiru Australia, or build a Jabiru airplane, with that airplane will come just some hose that'll stand up to the 80 pounds of pressure in the heat, and some clamps and hose barbs. A little story here. In 2003, I think it was, or early 2004, I told you a story about the fellow who didn't tighten the clamp and went down in the soybean field. Well, he was one of 5 within a year with the same story. I mean, almost exactly the same story. Let's see, do we need some sealant on those things? Do we have any over here?
Number 2, yep.
They were changing their oil. They had the hose off the oil cooler for some reason and got distracted before they had all the clamps tightened. Went up and flew. Some guys caught it right away and just landed, no damage or anything. We had 5 in a row like that in the course of a year. And that's when we were just developing our firewall forward kit for the Zenith 601, and we said it's about time that we use more of a standard aircraft practice on this and have regular aluminum AN fittings, flare fittings that you can tighten down with a wrench. I suppose if you get distracted and don't tighten them down either, eventually they might come off, but before they come off all the way, they're going to leak a lot, and maybe you'll see it. So just a little Permatex number 2 here.
You said Permatex number 2?
Yeah.
Does that have any Teflon or anything in it, or is it just a...
This is, I don't know what it has. I don't think it has Teflon in it.
You just get that at an auto parts store, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. You can get it at Kmart, I think, even.
Kmart?
Yep. Most. He thinks I'm using too big a wrench here, Mark. He's probably right. But that one was handy.
It's just the pipe thread fitting there.
Yes, this is 8th NPT that goes into the adapter. And what we provide you in the Zenith kit is some 8th NPT to AN6 flare fittings. So that's the way that, roughly in that position. But again, this is no big deal to change. The oil filter itself, yeah, there is oil on there. The oil filter itself is what holds this whole thing together. Okay. So,
You typically just hand tighten the oil filter?
we use the same filter instructions that come with it. Once it makes contact, then another half a turn. Or you can make it as tight as you want, but after that is on there and heats up and cools down a few times, you have to have a wrench to get it off.
You know, while we're talking about oil filters here, I never thought much about it because I used to always have the oil changed in my other airplanes. But I see these things where you cut the case off and look inside the filter. Yeah.
Yep.
Do we need to do that? I mean, what am I looking? Am I looking for a lot of metal in there? Or?
Okay, that's a smart thing to do, especially in the beginning, and we cut them off. Spruce sells a filter cutter for not very much money. You just cut the can off, and then you slice the filter off from because it'll be glued to the bottom of the base of the filter there. Cut that off and spread it out. And then look at what you see there. In the beginning, you see a lot of aluminum chips, and a lot of that's just plain old manufacturing debris that didn't get flushed out when they put the engine together.
Right.
The thing that you need to pay attention to is copper color, because that's main bearing material, or ferrous metal. And you can take a magnet and go over that with a magnet and see if you pick up any actual iron, steel chips. That would, you're going to get some in the beginning because the cylinders are steel, and as they wear in the rings, they scrape little bits off as they bed themselves in. And but if you see a whole bunch of copper-colored material, that's bearing material, and that would indicate a problem. Now you will see just a little bit in the beginning as the bearings get themselves acquainted with the crankshaft and the con rods and so forth. They lose a little material in the beginning, but after your first couple of oil changes, you really shouldn't see much of anything. You'll see a little aluminum now and then.
So first one could be pretty
Yeah, first one's got a lot of aluminum in it.
Yeah.
A lot of
Next
aluminum.
one should see maybe a
So
little bit.
a lot.
After
You
that,
should
it's-
see a lot less in the second one.
Yeah.
And by the time you get a couple hundred hours, you shouldn't see much. There's always just a little bit of material that comes off. Just that happens running the engine.
And we change at 25 and then every 50?
Yeah.
A single pipe. So, but the top one here, actually it's this way. The bottom one is your carb heat muff. It's just a single, just lets air come in, it comes out hot, goes up to the carb heat box. This is your cabin heat muff on top here. Now when I got mine, it didn't fit quite right. Don't panic. The only thing you have to do is drill out the little rivets here. You can take these little end pieces out right here, just cut off just a touch of it, wherever it needs to fit for your particular muffler, and then put them back in again. As simple as that. And then what I did is I cut a couple of new slots and just used one single stainless steel band all the way around. They had a band over here cut out for it, and I just moved it over so I could use one band all the way around for the both of them. So simple as that. And then what we can do is we'll pop the caps off, the red caps on the tailpipes there. And that's a 5/32 or 3/16 up there for the.
Yeah, they're coming. They kind of all get hung up together.
Yep. Okay. And then what you're going to have to do, which I learned, is you will have to unloosen one of the tailpipes in the batch. I just happened to unloosen the back one, which was already loose. There we go. If you want to unloosen the back one there, just look up in the back. Oh, the other thing, in the older models, they were actually putting this on top of the engine. It won't fit anymore with this new shroud here, so I just moved mine forward about 45 degrees. It works just the same. All right, going to the other side there. Oh, we got upside down. That's what the problem was. Here we go. And just start fitting it up in there. Two of them will go with a little bit of squeezing. I'll let you get your side set.
Okay, there you go.
All right. And then I'm going to work on getting these two in here. There we go.
Okay.
All right, just try to get up to that little band right there.
Close.
All right. Then, just go ahead and tighten up the exhaust tube again. And then, what we do, these two little springs that are in the kit, just hook one down the bottom, and then pull the other one up with a pair of pliers. And that's got it. That's what holds it on. There you go. Like I was saying, the top muff here is for your cabin heat. Your cabin heat is on this side of your inlet is on this side of the cowling. So just bring yourself your scat hose into this one side, out the other side into your inlet for your cabin heat box. Then we'll do that tomorrow when we put the cowlings up.
So the thing you want to avoid is pressurizing the lower cowl. So if you're not going to channel that air somewhere in and through a muff and into a box and then out the bottom, you don't want it just coming into the bottom of your cowl, because what cools that engine is the differential in pressure between the top and the bottom.